You don't. The handout, oops, wrong one. The handout shows you what I'm saying anyhow. So let's just see how that goes, if that's okay. Sometimes I can't see the keys. All right. Now, a couple of thoughts about this. And I'm recording this, and the handout will be on Do the One Thing as well. Plus, I gave you some seller scripts. In the MREA, Gary Keller talks about the 3 L's. What are those 3? Leads, listings, and leverage. I can't see. Sonia's hiding back there in the corner, so just, it's a. When I used to teach classes, in the college, I know that some of the students actually would paint eyeballs on their eyelids, so they could sit there like that. Right. Anyhow, I'll move over a little bit too. It's just that I want to make sure people aren't sleeping too much. Leads, listings, and leverage. There's an old saying in real estate: you need to list to last. Right? You need to list to last. If all you do is work with buyers, you may not like the real estate business. Right? There's some advantages to buyers. In fact, they're half of all the transactions. Right? Every transaction, there's a buyer and a seller. But your ability to leverage your time is a lot better with sellers. As I've said, the most listings I ever held at one time was 15. And I played racquetball with a friend 3 times a week at the same time, and I never missed it because I wanted to. I'd go away on the weekends. I'd come back, and agents would have left me messages because they'd been working that weekend, showing properties while I was not working, and they had offers on my listings. Right? I don't know if this sounds good to you, but 15 listings won't kill you. Right? 5 buyers will. Right? 5 buyers will. You can't work 5 buyers at one time. There's not enough time on the weekend. You'll end up getting none of them. Right, because you're not going. Just doesn't work. 3 is challenging, right, but possible. So do you understand? You can only have a limited number of buyers at any one time. Plus, you got to drive them around. You got to meet them, and then, right. It's a lot better to have listings, right? So it's a lot better to have listings. Can you get a copy? This is sort of a copy. This is sort of a copy. There's some parts. No, everybody else. There's some things that are not there, but you'll see. You'll see. All right. So, first of all, with everybody, and if you're online, I'm going to do it in such a way so I can see if you're voting too. All right, I'm going to make a couple more copies. I didn't realize that. Black and white. I will make a couple more copies. Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind retrieving them, and you can have a real copy too. And for those of you that are online, tough. No, I mean, if you're online, what I'm going to do is 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's not the right one. You'll have a copy of the PDF. All right. So, slideshow.
I was going to tell you yesterday on that, and you kept mentioning it, but somebody had their mic on, wrestling around.
Right.
It was really hard to hear on the other end.
Yeah, I'm going.
They would realize that,
Yeah. So we got. Thanks for sending the PDF. I haven't done it yet, Jamal, but I will. All right. Before I'm gone, I'm going to upload the PDF to Do the One Thing so that you can download it.
Before you're going.
Sorry?
Before you're going.
Before I leave. Yes, because if I leave, then I don't remember and I don't do it. So my starting point is this. It's good to have listings, right? Does anybody want to argue with that analysis? All right, so everybody accepts we want to have listings. Question is now, where will we get them from? Where do most listings come from? When the National Association of Realtors interviews buyers and sellers, and they ask sellers, how did you find your agent? What is the number one way in which they say they find their agent?
Somebody else.
Somebody referred them, right? So they had worked with them in the past, or they were referred by a friend, family, or coworker. So you ought to talk to your friends, families, coworkers, and see if any of them know anybody that wants to buy or sell real estate. So after that, after our sphere of influence, where are we going to find people that want to sell their home? Well, we could call for sale by owners. We could call expireds. We could just call people randomly. Probably the most successful way of getting listings, if you're talking to people you do not know, is through geographic farming. If you run listing agents in given areas, and you identify somebody who seems to have listing and listing after listing after listing, and you take their DRE number and you search, you'll find that many times there's clumps of listings together. If you go all the way back, you'll see these pockets, and what they're doing is farming. Now, I want to just start with some numbers. If you're not convinced that you ought to farm, let's look at some numbers. Let's say a home sells at $600,000 with 2.5% commission to the listing side. That would be $16,250. It says to you. It depends on how much of that you get to keep on where you are in our process. Let's say you've capped. Doesn't everybody want to cap?
Yes.
Right? So you'd be getting $16,250. Assuming that families move every 10 years, which, by the way, is according to the National Association of Realtors survey of buyers and sellers, about average. It varies depending upon how old the person is, the value of their home, and a bunch of other factors. That would mean a 10% annual turnover rate, right? People move every 10 years, 1/10 are moving. So if you had 500 homes and it had a 10% turnover rate, you would have 50 possible listings, right? First of all, is it going to be important for us to know what our turnover rate is, right? So what would be the income if you just got listings, if you got 10% of the market share? 1 out of 10, you would have had 5 listings, and at $16,250, that's $81,250 gross commission income. Not too shabby. If you made to 20% market share, well, that's $162,500 in gross commission income. Now, this, by the way, varies on where you're farming. My suggestion is that you farm areas where people are likely to sell and buy, at least to start with. I started in Blossom Valley 95123 because I assumed the people that were selling there would buy something else. Eventually, I went to Almaden. The price point is much harder, but everybody left the county. Do you understand? If townhomes and condos and starter homes, the value of that farm is virtually everyone who sells is going to buy a house. And usually, according to the National Association of Realtors, over 40% buy a house worth more than the one they sold. Not everybody does, but in that low-end beginning, they buy up. So let's assume that 1/3 of your listings involve people that are going to not only sell but buy something. Not all of them, but 1/3 of them would. And I've been rounding down, and that they purchase a home 1/3 more expensive than the one they currently own. The rule of thumb we used to use was 50% more. So I'm being a little bit conservative. 1/3 of them that sell are going to buy, and they're going to buy a house worth 1/3 more. Well, 1/3 more than 600,000 is 800,000, and that would be at 2.5%, about $20,000 in commissions. So I didn't really want to have that little question mark there, but thank you, computer. So 5 listings divided by 1/3, that's what the question mark was supposed to be, a division sign. I rounded it down to 1, right? Actually, it's more than 1, but let's just say, so if you had 10% and you had 5 listings, it's possible that one of them might also buy. That's another $20,000, right? At 20%, it would be another, out of the 10 listings, that would be 3 more transactions, which would be another $60,000. Do you understand? By the way, a lot of times agents say to me, I want to start at the high end. Yeah, the turnover rate's lower, there's more competition, many of them have real estate agents, and they all leave the county. They don't, so do you understand that if you started where it was people that had bought their first home, do you understand they had an agent probably when they bought their home, but they're less loyal to them. People that live in Saratoga and Silver Creek have used sometimes the same agent 3 or 4 times. But you can tell them, I'm new. Right? You don't want to use Nancy. She's busy selling homes. I got nothing to do but help you. Right? Isn't that right? You think that's going to work?
Yeah.
No, they're going to use Nancy because they've used Nancy 3 or 4 times. Right? But you get a first-time home buyer and you farm them. Do you understand? You farm them. They're going to sell and buy, less competition.
So you're saying that, okay, let's say we start at the 450.
450 range, right? So you can modify these projections a little bit, but yeah.
We would potentially make more commission if we did the 450 and they bought up a third.
600.
Yeah.
Right.
Then
1-800 that leaves the county. Everybody in Almaden moved away. I had a guy, I sold 4 homes that he owned in his family, 4 properties. A couple of them in Almaden, one in Cupertino, right, and one in Blossom Valley as he moved. And he called me up. He moved to Grass Valley, and he said, hi, Mike, how's it going? Just thought I'd, because we knew each other fairly well. I'd been selling homes in his family for a long time. He said, I had dinner with some friends last night. I told them what a great real estate agent you are. And I'm like, Mark, you're in Grass Valley, right? You understand? Do you have a Rolodex of people that remember in San Jose? Why don't you call them? But do you understand? He's gone, right? Happy with me, an advocate, but not around, right? You understand? Picking the right farm is really an important thing, right? And is everybody clear on what my suggestion is, right? Or have I been people that bought the home for the first time, right? Easiest to farm. So let's assume then, if using these numbers, do you understand we're getting another $20,000 to $60,000. If you combine them together, we get some money on the listings, 10% market share. You could get $81,000, 200. Well, that's way too. That's a mistake. Oh well. So this is what I get for. So 10%. How did I get to that? Was $81,250. 250,000. There's a few extra zeros here. $81,250. How about that? The math ended up in the right spot, but I was changing my numbers. I had originally written this at a different time when prices were at a different. So do you understand, if you looked at the combined potential of what 10% market share could mean, that includes $81,250 from the listings plus an extra $20,000 from one buyer that bought, you could make $101,000 capping, right? You'd be really close to capping. And at 20%, you've blown by capping. Critical mass. 1 or 2 for sale signs of yours in an area where there are 10 to 12 listings is not sufficient to reach critical mass. When you have 20 to 30% of the for sale signs, people start calling you. Right? People start calling you. You don't have to do anything. You become perceived as the agent to work with if you're selling your home in the neighborhood. This takes 3 to 5 years, in my experience, to reach critical mass. All right. So farming takes a long time to produce results, but it produces results for a long time. Do you understand? This is like an annuity or a salary, right? You get a certain percentage of the business. Yeah.
Okay, like at that range, I've sold in this one area, condos. That's just people that want to buy the new job.
Right.
So I met people at the open house. They said, I want to sell, but I'm not gonna. I want to sell, but I don't want to buy until I sell. Then you start
Yeah, the question is, this is a different topic which I'm going to cover in another session, because I've heard this before, and I call it a move analysis. We used to call it a move up analysis, and I was going to do a session on it in a couple of weeks, and what it involves is how do you sell and buy, right? Because there are a discussion of contingencies, there's how do you structure it, you have to combine what is called the seller's net with the buyer's cost to come up with an overall picture. It's basically a buyer consultation and a listing consultation blended together, but we call it something for marketing purposes. I'm going to cover that, including giving you flyers. I actually had a system, which I'm going to look and see if I still have on my computer, but I know how to put it together. It wouldn't take that long, right? So anyhow, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these are based on a 2.5%
Commission. Yeah.
Is that on purpose, or is that?
Because I base it on 2.5% because that's our average commission per side. The average commission in Santa Clara County is about 5%. In our office, looking at our numbers for last year, our average side was about 2.5%. So I'm using that as the example. Sure.
So, because we kind of talked about this, like, and so once you kind of select your area that you're going to do, and, because I give you that one complex that I was looking at, so is there, other than like driving around and looking at complexes, is there somewhere we can get like information on where condo complexes are, or?
How would we find where condo complexes are?
Google.
Google, that's one. That's the answer to everything. What else?
How about going in the MLS and selecting a certain area?
Yeah.
But only click townhouses.
Yeah,
It'll
that,
pull up, you'll see,
bought and sold.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could.
So,
check on
one
your-
of the things that I want to do is I have software that helps with this. Rebo Gateway uses something called tract analysis, which if you don't want to do it with me, you could talk to Chicago Title and they can give you an app that also has it. But what it requires is that you have some idea to begin with, where you want to farm. And so what I was planning to do, to a large extent, what this beginning session is designed to do is to uncover those people that are interested in actually farming, right? And what I know is everybody wants listings, but not everybody's willing to work to get them, right? I know that this does not apply to us, but I'm just saying I've seen that before. So what I would do, we're going to talk a little bit about the numbers, but if you just go to the MLS and you pick a zip code, right, I'll talk a little bit about this as we go along. I'll give you my idea. So in terms of farming, there's demographic farming, which is what we're going to focus on. You can farm demographically, demographically, or psychographically. Right, and the demographic and psychographic are things we can talk about later. But demographic, I've had agents that were very successful that worked a particular demographic group. They were a Korean agent, a Hispanic agent, right? You understand? And they worked that demographic group. It often, although not always, involves the ability to speak another language. However, there's age and gender demographics. If you haven't seen them yet, there are single women buying homes. Did you know that single women buy more homes than single men? Is that a shock to anyone? So there are women that are actually marketing themselves as an agent for single women. Right? You understand they're usually females too. Just thought I would say that. So, but you understand that's those are other things which we're not going to do. Psychographic are where you are farming people based upon interest and hobbies. I've had agents that were runners and they joined running clubs and met people there. I had agents that did quilting that were members of churches. You get the idea. But we're going to talk about geographic farming. But I just want you to think, sometimes we use... What?
You said geographic?
Geographic is what we're going to talk about today.
Oh.
Demographic and psychographic are sometimes referred to as people farms. All right. So farming takes too long and costs too much. It doesn't have it. I got my first listing in 2 weeks when I started farming. I'm not saying that's normal, right? I'm not saying that's normal. So, oh well, it's been 3 weeks and I haven't gotten one, but it doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. But it produces results if you keep doing it. Somebody else already dominates the area. First of all, they may not be as dominant as they look, but also there's some people don't like the agent that's dominating the area. And you need to do research. My opinion is you can find areas where nobody seems to be dominating it. What happened with all of the REOs is that agents stopped farming because they were just working with the banks. A farm limits you to that area or specialty. This is the most common concern. How about that? Not complaint. Common concern is I don't want to be pigeonholed as a Blossom Valley agent, right? I want to sell anything, anywhere to anyone, right? I don't, right?
You gotta start somewhere.
Right. I don't care if it's a luxury home. So the problem with that is that floodlights are not as powerful as laser beams, right? And the fact that you have a farm doesn't mean you can't sell other properties to other people, but what you're going to need to do is brand yourself for that particular farm. Right? You have to brand yourself for that particular farm. It's all about mailers and mass marketing. It's both marketing and prospecting. You can get business without spending a lot of money. But as the farm expands, you start to use mailing houses and mailing systems, right? But once you start making money, you can start and stop your farming efforts. This is a bad thought, right? You have to be consistent and persistent. You have to grind it out. If you stop, they'll forget who you are.
I think I've had, like where I live, it's a good example. I will get something, I will get a card or something, and then I won't see
Yes.
another thing. And I'm like, that was a lot of money, because some of them were those really nice glossy cards.
Right.
That's a lot of money to do.
And so I came from an office that was really big on farming, and I taught I made a lot of money farming, and the biggest mistake people make is this is what people always say to me. They say, I tried it, it doesn't work. That's what they'll say. I tried it, it doesn't work. Or how often did you do it? I sent out 3 postcards and no one called. So farming doesn't work. Or they'll send out 1 and nobody calls. And so then they stop. Right? You're not doing it right. My suggestion is, I've been saying this for a couple decades, if you're not willing to do it on a consistent basis, give the money to charity. All right? You understand? Just figure out what you were going to spend, write a check to KW Cares if you can't think of any charity, and at least it'll do some good. All right? At least it'll do some good.
Well, and honestly, because since I've been looking into it, it's like, didn't you just print out something, the information sheet, the market stuff, and you walk it?
Yeah, it's one. Well, we're going to talk. Yeah.
That's why I want to, like with the condos, I'm like, to me, that's very doable because you can get around, the complex quicker. So.
Yeah. So there are factors to consider. Goals, budget. It does cost something to print out flyers to walk around and hand them out. Right? It's better to have something that you can leave. Size, location, Mets versus haven't Mets, average turnover price, turnover rate, market conditions, competition, and your fit.
Does the flyer have to be very fancy paper, color?
Does the flyer? No, the flyer doesn't have to be fancy paper. I used to use colored paper with black printing. All right, you can go and buy reams of colored paper.
Yeah.
If you can find somebody cheaper than our machines, feel free to use them. Right, but you can bring your own paper and put it in the tray and print them out. And I'm going to show you what I'm planning on doing for those that are willing to commit is to help you actually make the marketing tools the flyers using the Michael Lewis marketing suite. All right, we're actually going to make flyers, right? But you're going to, but before I can help you make a flyer, you've got to know what who your farm is and where it is, right? You have to already know that, all right? Because otherwise I can't do anything. Prospecting-based marketing enhanced. Does anybody know what that means? Prospecting-based marketing enhanced comes from MREA, yeah.
So prospecting is when you go out to knock on doors or make calls or go after it. Marketing is passive.
Flyers.
It's the mailing.
Right.
The flyers.
So we suggest that you ought to knock on doors and call people because it doesn't cost any money. And then add to that flyers that you could hand out. Size. I think that 500 is the minimum size to begin. Agents say, well, I have 250. How many sales were there last year? 2. So you're going to get what, 10%? What's 10% of 2? None. 0 is 10% of 2. Isn't that right? So do you understand you need at least 500? And by the way, in order to make this really work, you're going to need between 750 and 1,000, right, over time. And what agents usually do is once they're doing well, they move to either adjacent streets or neighborhood, because you'll notice your farm will start to bleed into other areas, right? Plus people are used to seeing your signs. Location accessibility. Can you easily get there? Can you easily walk it? You know, people say, I want to, the east, agents wanted to do the East Hills. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's nice, right? Have you ever got to try walking around up there? Geographic boundaries, kind of homes, and desirability. There's some value in starting with an area where the homes are all part of one subdivision or a couple of subdivisions, so that the price ranges are somewhat consistent. And by Mets and haven't Mets, some people like to start where they know people. Right? That could backfire. One of our agents was farming. People always say, I want to farm where I live. Right? Why? Because I live there. Fine. And then one of our agents was farming where she lived, and her teenage son was arrested for breaking into neighbors' homes and stealing stuff.
Because she was out walking.
Yeah, well, because she wasn't there to watch him. And so, and everybody in the neighborhood knew this. Bummer, right? And so, can you understand there may be a reason to not farm where you live? Just saying. Average sales price, will it support your goals? All right, I do believe starting low and moving up. Turnover rate, national average is 16.6%. The farm, 10%. I've farmed areas that had 8% turnover. But I would, if I had 8% turnover, I'd like the price to be. See, in our market, does everybody understand? Because of our price, we can have a lower turnover rate and a lower percentage and still make money, right? You understand? This was written for everyone, but 7.5% or 8% can work given our pricing. Tenure in previous home by type of home. This isn't interesting. I'm not going to go through every one of these columns, but if you look at single-family detached homes, the number of people that sold in 1 year or less was 3%. 2 to 3 years, 7%. 4 to 5 years, 11%. Then it goes up to 15, so 20. There's a program that I have access to. This is the tract analysis from Rebo Gateway, which you can, as I said, Chicago Title will let you hook into it. But do you understand that we could identify, let's say you were going to do mailers, would it be better to identify where the people are most likely to be selling? So somebody who bought this in the last 6 months, you might not need to send them a postcard, right? You understand? Now, sometimes they sell anyhow because they have some emergency, but if we're gambling, we would go where the sweet spot is. I'm going to put the whole PowerPoint session. In fact, this comes from the Home Buyer and Seller Survey of the National Association of Realtors.
Thank you.
And so what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it now so people believe me. Right? 'Cause most people don't believe me anymore. I don't know why, but they don't believe me. So I'm going to create a post. I'm going to call it farming. And I'm going to add the PowerPoint. How about that from these slides? And which I have someplace. The actual PowerPoint, so you could read it in its own.
So we're just gonna do one thing?
Do the one thing. It's already there. All right, and eventually I'll put the video there too. Okay, so why not? So the turnover rate varies depending on how long people have been there. The value of using the tract analysis in Rebuild Gateway is that it allows us to target the people that are most likely to be selling at any given point. So we don't, one way of saving money is to concentrate our marketing efforts on the people more likely to sell. Your mileage may vary. The thing about Rebuild Gateway is it'll tell us what the numbers are for a given tract. You have to start by being able to tell me your tract. I had somebody who said they made a request from Lauren to get phone numbers, and she said, this is my farm, and she gave us 2 zip codes. Now, you understand, nobody is farming 2 zip codes, right? The program can't spit out that many phone numbers, right? We're talking about like 20,000 people, right? You understand, I need a concise definition of what your farm is, right, in order to run any of these analyses. Right? That means if you took a map and you took a Sharpie and you drew around it, right, that's what I need in order to be able to run the software. I can't do it with a zip code, right? So people always, they keep saying, I have a zip code, how about 95136? I can't run the software on 95136, right? It's too many people.
Michael, did you say, I don't know if I understood you, but if we go Gateway, they can tell us the turnover rate?
Right, absolutely.
Give them a tract, or we just?
You still have to have a tract.
Okay.
There's a thing called tract analysis. If you showed me a map with your tract, I would run it for you. The problem that I always have is that people won't give me their tract, right? They'll give me a zip code, they'll say a city, they'll say something, and then they want me to find the best one in it. I don't have that kind of time, right? You understand? But if you said, we're thinking of this, what does it look like? We could run it. But you have to, when we meet, you have to start with some ideas, not a zero idea, let's start looking around and see, but you have to give me some ideas, right? Is this area or this area or that area, right? Days off. We want to look at competition. Your fit for the farm. Is it easier if you speak the same language that most of the people speak in the farm? Could that be easier? Right? You understand? You sort of, yes.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just answer my question. And so you would suggest finding out, I mean, looking at that by going to, say,
How would we find demographic information for a given area?
sorry,
Anyone know?
RPR.
RPR sort of Google. You've learned Google. Realist and RPR both give demographic information for given neighborhoods. You need to just drive around and figure out if you can relate and fit with them. All right? We had agents that were sort of rednecks. You know, the guy would drive his truck to. Now, in certain neighborhoods, he fit really well. Right? Other neighborhoods, not so much. Right? You know, you understand. You have to at least look at that. Who are the people that live there, and would they like you? Would you relate to them? Yes.
And I've heard someone that looked a lot like you tell stories stories about. Sometimes people want somebody who's very different from them to be their
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes not.
But you understand, if you show up in an Armani suit and they're blue collar, sometimes they feel you can't communicate effectively. All right.
So along that point, so if you look at Regal Gateway, you will give us like, what, like.
You have to start with a tract.
No, okay, if we have the track, and you say you want to see if you fit, so you're looking at, the economics, or you're looking.
All right, so this is a rebuild gateway, what it looks like, and this is complicated enough that if you guys just, I'm already paying for it, right? So if I were to pick, here's Blossom Hill Row. I'm going to pick where I used to farm, just to give you a so what. So this area here was my original 95123 farm. And so what we would do, and I really didn't want to do this right now, but if you said, see, this was bordered by streets. Blossom Avenue, Calero, this is Snell, Highway 85. Now, I can do, for that, I can block that out and run the tract analysis. Right? If you say, I don't know, somewhere in Blossom Valley, I can't run a tract analysis. Right? You understand? I need boundaries.
Would it help to give you an address within the area?
Yes, I can do a radius search or a boundary search. Right? I can do a radius search. The radius search requires that you give me an address. Right? Boundary searches require that I mark it out. So the idea is you need to do a little bit of research before we get here. Let me give you people are jumping in and out. If you're just confused and have no idea where to begin, let's just say you're confused and you have no idea where to begin. What I would suggest that you do is you log into the MLS and you go to search, and then what I would suggest that you do, notice where it says stats. Click on stats and residential. Now, there's some value in farming townhomes and condos. They're all together. Easy to walk, easy to identify, easy to come up with comps. So let's just say we're going to pick townhomes and condos. If you could narrow it down by at least the county, this is going to help a lot. If you could narrow it down to a city, that would help even more. Let's just say let's say you can't even come up with a city, so we're going to say Santa Clara County. And we click on customize, and we want to look at the past 12 months, and the statistic we want is the number of closed sales, and we want to sort it by zip code. And we click on generate. And what this is going to do, I'm recording this, by the way, but this tells us where the zip codes are with the most closed sales. Notice my alma mater comes first. I picked 95123 because it ranks very high on single family and condo and townhome sales. All right? 94043, 95035, 95136, by the way, is another part of Blossom Valley, and down it goes. All right? So I would suggest, if you're going to do condos and townhomes, why don't you start with one of the top ones, just for giggles, right? And if we go back to search and you say, well, I want to start with single-family homes, I don't want to do condos and townhomes, so we pick single-family homes, we're doing the same thing, generating a list by zip code. 95125 is Willow Glen, 124 is Cambrian. Which is, people ask me, where should I farm? I say, how about 124? Oh, I don't know. right? I don't know, right? I'm gonna maybe someplace else. Why not 125? Because Willow Glen is inundated by real estate agents. 124, not so much. 95020, 95123. There's the area that I used to farm. Notice it's number 1 for condos and townhomes, and number 4 for single family homes. 1037, 120 is Almaden. There's the other area I farmed. 127, and you get the idea. Does everybody understand what I did? I just looked. So now we sort of have a zip code, right? So if you've said, all right, I'm going to do 124 or 123, if you understand now what we would do is we would run the MLS for that zip code and then maybe do it in price ranges, right? Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. What's the price range that sells the most?
Well, gee, I wonder if we could do that. If we clicked on, we look at how about this? We click on customize, and rather than, let's say we found a zip code. So we're going to go back to search. People think I'm uber geeky because I know how to do this. So let's just say that we've picked a zip code 95123, right? And I'm picking condos and townhomes, and what I really want now is, notice it says, where is it? Sales price, median, active pending, closed days, sales expired, list price, average, medium, new listings, maybe it's a preset, I have to find a preset. Sales volume by area, sales by price range, that looks potential. We click on that preset, we click on generate, and what it shows is 200 to 400,000 is the sweet spot for condos and townhomes in that area. To 400. Now we could narrow that down even further, right? We could narrow that down even further because now that we know this is condos, right?
What I happen to know is that's the best range in the whole county, $200 to $400 townhomes.
Right, we could run that, right? So now that we know that that's where we're looking for, could we now go to the search and say, let's look at, and again, I'm not saying this is the only zip code, I'm just using one I'm familiar with. We're looking at solds, condos, and we're doing the zip code 95123, and what we might, what?
You got 11
I got 11 what?
matches.
Right, but this is for, because I haven't marked them all.
Oh,
Right now I have 2,500 matches, and I go 0 minus 360, and I've got 303 matches. Can I break this down by price range? All right, so if I said I want 200 to 400, I now have 202 matches. I might do, how many are 200 to 300? 106. So it's about even, right? So if I were to say, well, I want the high end 300 to 400, there's 100 matches. I click on results. It's going to show me, now this is a special display we've created, we meaning somebody else. So I want to go back to this previous, go back. So the display, you might just want to have, so now that you're looking at this, is it possible for you to, you see this little button here that says map? Click that button, look for clumps, right? Are there clumps? I actually know where the clumps are. Over here, these are the Macatis. This is the Almaden Village. Over here, Banana Grove, Trade Winds, right? So find, zero in on a clump, and then take a look at that. Right? Right?
very cool.
See, rather than just I've watched lots of people pick a farm for non-business reasons. I like the houses. Well, that's nice, right? You know, how many of them sell? I don't know. I just really like the neighborhood, right? So, well, that's nice, but you understand. I've sold. I didn't particularly like some of the homes I sold, right? But nobody's asking you to live there, right? You understand? You want to start with fertile ground, Does this make, yeah, Christian?
So you chose categories 1 through 5 in the previous screen at townhouses, and where did you put 0 through 360?
I put 0 through 360 in the, if we go down here to criteria, down here under change date. It's the easiest way. I'm lazy, and putting in the list date up here and the sale date up here is more complicated than putting in the status change date. 0 minus 360 means it gives you the last 360 days worth.
So how relevant is it how many agents are already working?
It can be relevant. What I would suggest that you do is look for one where you don't see one agent's name over and over and over and over and over again.
You show how to do it.
Well, you have to just look at the names of the agents. All right, how do you do that? You go. One of the things that you need to learn how to do is to create a custom export. And the way you'd create a custom export is you go to My Matrix and you go to Settings. And you go to, can anybody tell where we're going to go to create a custom export? Maybe the button that says Custom Exports. How about that? Now, I have already done this.
We get candy bars?
And yes, lollipops. One of them is I called Who is Doing the Business. So let's just assume that you haven't had me do any of these for you. So you'd click on Add and Export. And what you want to know, you would call this something, right? You know, that you'll remember. I've already done this 3 or 4 times, so I'm not going to keep doing it. But what you want to know is who the listing agent is. And so if you go here, there's listing agent full name. You click on that and you added it to the export. You can click on the name of their company. I also like their DRE number. Now, I've already done this, so I really don't want to do it again because I've done it like 3 or 4 times. I keep creating them and then I delete them. But if we were to go back here and click on results, you click on this little box up here and then click, you want to make sure you click on all. So we've selected all. Once you've selected some, the export button appears. You click on export. We pick, how about who is doing the business? That's one of the most recent ones. We click on export. It gives you a file to download. You open the file, and what you're going to see when we auto-fit the column width, this is a longer version I did. It's got their license number, their office name, their name, the selling agent's name. I don't know why I did all this stuff, but we did all this stuff. So one of the things that you would do,
They're not a whole bunch the same.
so you click on this top row, data, sort, sort, and now they're all in order. So Alan Benjamin, whatever area we just ran, has done 1, 2, 3, 3 sales. We scroll down here and take a peek. Roberta Thompson has done 3 sales, and that's it. Right? That's it. 2 guys have done 3 sales, and notice it's all over the place after that. Right? Sometimes you'll run it and you'll see no one has done 2. That means no one's farming. Right? If you start, and what I would then do is take a look at, and CSR is from a different kind of a company. So the idea is that you and Roberta, CSR, they're both from that same company. Now, what that means is that those signs have appeared a lot. But you would then, what you could do is run Alan Benjamin stuff and just see where he is, where he's going, and maybe there's someplace you could go that they're not. Right? But then you don't have the same kind of name, you don't maybe look the same, you don't come from the same kind of company, and most people don't farm like we used to farm. Right? I'm just,
How fresh is that data?
It's from the MLS updates every 15 minutes. The multiple is, I just exported this from the MLS.
Every 15 minutes?
The MLS updates its database every 15 minutes. So this is
Machine numbers change.
right.
So my other question about that, okay, so we see that there's 2 people that have gotten 3 or less, 3. Okay, now,
So how would you find out the Rebo Gateway Tract Analysis will tell us that. The title company would tell you that. But what I'm going to ask for is what the title company is going to ask for is for you to tell me what the streets are that you're talking about. And see, my frustration is that people want me to do the analysis, but they can't describe what the farm is. They'll say, well, could you do 95136? No, I can't. I can't do that. If you say, how about this complex? Easy. The title company can do that too, right? They have similar software. Rebo Gateway will do it too. Does everybody get where I'm going? Have I made myself clear that I need you to give me outlines of the areas you're thinking about? Not, if you're going to meet with me, don't just show up saying, I don't know, someplace in San Jose, right? You find it for me, right? I don't have that kind of time. But does everybody understand? You could do by the way, using Realist, it'll tell you how many units are in that development. But the title company, see, the problem as I go through this is that now people are going to want me to show them how to use Realist. They're going to want me to show them how to use Rebo Gateway. They're going to want me to. The title company will do this for you, but you have to give them the streets. All right? You have to at least start that way. And the title companies, aren't they? They're friendlier than I am, aren't they? Aren't they? You don't know. You haven't met enough of them yet. All right. So, select research. Select a target farm area, the number of homes in the area, average selling price, number of properties transferred in the past year, number of current listings. Analyze what number and percentage of listings sold by company and sales associate. It's easier if Keller Williams has sold homes there, even if it's not ours or Keller Williams, because people are used to seeing the for sale signs. Right? It's just easier. It doesn't mean you couldn't do it. I'm just saying I would like to know. Right? Does that... defining your identity and positioning, this is related to something called a USP, or value statement. Right? And you sort of have to see if your image and fit and all this, if you fit the area. I don't have money to lead generate. It doesn't have to cost money. You can call people on the phone and knock on doors. You want to establish your reputation first and then build relationships. What you want to do is to have a consistent branding message so that people see you. And relationship farming, prospecting base, that means door knocking, phone calls. Marketing enhanced would mean flyers and postcards. So let's talk about if you were going to, let me find my trusty calculator here. Some of you are going, oh, goody math. So let's just say that you have 500 homes, right? How many weeks are you going to work a year? By the way, this is something I'm going to keep mentioning in the coaching thing. How much time do you plan on spending on real estate? How many weeks do you plan on working a year? 50. So if you have 500 homes and you're going to work, we're going to divide that by the 50 weeks you're going to work. That means that basically 10 a week in order to get through all of them. And so if you were to, if it takes about 3 minutes times 3 minutes is 30 minutes every other week. This is using, by the way, a 30 minutes every other week. So let me try this. Well, this is a beginning exercise. All right. So how many, let's say you're going to do it.
3 minutes comes from how long it takes?
It takes on average to door knock and talk to somebody.
Okay.
All right. So let's say, let me do my own. I'm using my other calculator. Come on, one. All right, so we're going to clear. So let's say 500 homes, and you're going to want to at least, let's try once a month, right? So if you're going to talk to them each once a month, that would require that I know what this is going to come to. I'm using their formula, but that would mean you do it 12 times, so that would be 6,000 doors. And if we divide that by 50 weeks, you would be doing 120 a week times 3 minutes each is 360 minutes. Divided by 60 would be about 6 hours. I'll tell you what I've found. I was just trying these numbers. I saw them in Austin when I was there. I'll tell you what I found. If you're handing out flyers, it takes about an hour to do 100 flyers. So if you're spending, that's just an average, right? If you're just handing out flyers. If you're talking to people, because not everybody answers the door, on average it takes about 3 minutes. So if you wanted to cover 50 homes, right, and it took 3 minutes, that would be 150 minutes. So you're looking at a little more than 2 hours, right, for 50 homes. The idea is at the beginning you want to do this more often. So one of the patterns is if you have 500 homes and you're willing to hand out flyers, just to make sure you've got something on everybody's door, you spend 1 hour a day, 5 days a week. 100 flyers in an hour, 5 days a week. My suggestion is that you do that for 8 weeks in a row.
When you're handing out flyers, just dropping it off?
Just dropping it off.
You're not talking to anybody.
Not talking to anybody.
Okay.
Right? It takes an hour to hand out 100 flyers.
You're not allowed to put it in the mailbox.
You're not allowed to put it in the mailbox, but you could put it on the door. There's door hangers. You could we used to put it in front of them, on that sort of thing. So the idea is at the beginning, for farming to work, the first 8 weeks you ought to do it once a week. Once a week, 500 homes once a week. Get the flyer out. Right now, if you're willing to spend 2 hours doing it, you would knock on doors as well. Right, 5 days a week. And that other hour that you would spend would give you a chance to talk to people. Most conversations aren't really long, right? 2 hours, right, would be more than enough time to cover 500 homes each week, right? Is that, because most of them, you're just going to leave the flyer, you'll have some conversations.
So we're still talking about the demographic area that we picked.
A geographic area. Right.
So if our geographic area consists of 500 homes, we got it covered.
Right. To start with. Right. So what I did when I started is I was using postcards because I was selling real estate already from other sources. So I actually had a budget. So I started with the postcards once a week for the first 8 weeks. This, by the way, is called in a Millionaire Real Estate Agent the 8x8.
8 by what?
8x8. Right? Once a week for 8 weeks. Right? Now, by the end of the 8 weeks, they know who you are. Right? After that, every other week is probably the best plan, at least for a period of time. My experience has been if you go to once a month, it's not enough. Right?
There's one agent that's a Keller Williams agent, but not of this office, that has a blog. She mails that every month.
Right. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Right. I'm almost done with this, but some of the things we're going to talk about is other things you can do. So the idea is that this requires what I'm trying to accomplish today is to find out who wants to actually farm and is willing to make a commitment. All right. That's what I'm trying to find out. Because where we're going to go with this is you could there's a bunch of things. We used to create neighborhood directories where everybody in the neighborhood could list their services. I had a neighborhood calendar. I would have people call me from my farm and say, how do we get our event on your calendar? Right? I had a website that supported it. You understand this requires effort. And just so you can, there's more. We're not going to do all of this right now because I've run out of time. But these are just some thoughts. What I did is I've put at the pretty much near the end of this, to be successful, right? I just want to make sure everybody sees this list before you volunteer for duty. Door knock and talk to everyone, call everyone by telephone. I can get the phone numbers of most of the people. When you talk to people, you keep track of all their personal information, kids' names, hobbies, pets' names. Distribute by mail, personal delivery, or newspaper child. I actually have a copy of the agreement we used to use where you'd get kids in the neighborhood that would help you hand out flyers. Right? You pay them so much a flyer to do it. You have to watch them. Otherwise, they'll throw the flyers away and ask for their money. Right? I have a copy of the agreement. We used to have, and so you would meet them at a certain time and you'd go up and down the streets. I hired agents at that company whose beginning in real estate they were the flyer distributing children of one of our top agents. That's how they got interest. That's how they ended up working in the office. These people could be in your downline eventually, right? But you understand it's a way of cutting instead of postage, instead of you doing it. When you get to 1,000 homes, when you get to 1,000, where the numbers start to improve, you get the idea. It's going to be hard for you to walk and knock on 500 of them. Each and every week, for at least 8 weeks. Notice the each and every week for at least 8 weeks. Every quarter we would do something special. Magnetic calendar, notepads. I threw in fly swatter. One of the agents used to hand out fly swatters with her picture on it. And what was a little bit disgusting is that if you hit a fly, you could see the parts of the dead fly sticking through her face on the but you understand, I would go to restaurants and people would have my notepads, and some of the server, when they were writing down orders, were using our notepads to write down orders, right? Do you understand? After a while, you became part of it. Preview all the active listings that come up in the neighborhood, right? This is my list. I just dumped it in at the end because they have another list which I've given you a copy of, but that's what's required. Learn about in schools, shopping, transportation, know the floor plans and builders' names, have an idea about the value of all the homes. Would you understand what I mean? Research and become a student of what homes are worth in that neighborhood. Make yourself visible using car signs. We used to have car signs, and we would drive through the neighborhood like on Saturday morning when people are out slowly. So people would see your car go by with your car sign. They think you're on your way to an appointment. My slogan was hard at work in your neighborhood. Right? So what
You can steal it, right?
yes, I stole it from somebody. All right, so we've lost some people, but what I would like to do then is to figure out who among us is willing to embark on this journey. I'm willing to help you make flyers. Right? I'm willing to help you actually make the marketing material. Yes.
Yes.
You're volunteer. We have one volunteer. So we're going to need to make an appointment, pick out some geographic areas so that we can talk about them specifically next time we meet.
Now, tomorrow we're having a meeting. Can we do some of that time for this?
Yeah, we could. And I have Brett is in. So I've got 2. Brett and Athenia. And you 3. Not ready. All right. It's good to know because there's no reason to do this if you're not going to really do it. You might as well spend the time. It's good exercise. But all right, that's it. Every Friday, 11 o'clock.